second bow, third bow. Okay, then we do the homage chant. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Three refuges. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchāmi. And the 5 precepts. Pāṇātipātā vēramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Adinādāna vēramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Kāmesu micchācārā vēramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Musāvādā vēramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Surameraya majjapamadatthāna vēramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so very good evening to everyone here, and also early wish for every Singaporeans here a happy National Day, which is tomorrow. And for this topic, this is our second lesson. So the previous lesson was like 2 months ago. So we might do a short refresher, and this topic is suggested by someone who is not here also. So we just briefly go through what is these 10 perceptions. So basically it's about the monk who is sick. His name is called Venerable Girimānanda. So that's how we got the name of the sutta. And Venerable Ananda is like advising that the Buddha should go down and see this monk. But in return, the Buddha actually decided not to go down and see this monk and asked Venerable Ananda to go down instead and just repeat these instructions, and this Venerable Girimānanda should know what to do. And we have sort of like discussed in the previous lesson, this Venerable Girimānanda probably is a veteran meditator, a seasoned or veteran meditator. If he is able to perform all these instructions from number 1 to number 10, right? And why is there a sequence? If we look at number 10, mindfulness of in and out breathing, seems to be like logically like the first step or for beginners to do, but on the contrary, this Venerable Girimānanda has to start off with impermanence. And the first one is inconstancy, not self, unattractiveness, and all those stuff that lead to cessation of this craving, yeah, and this passion for the world. So his instruction is a bit unique. So looking at meditators' point of view, this structure might be very good for intermediate meditators. Intermediate meditators. If let's say you've been meditating for some time and you straight away start off with the in and out breathing, a lot of meditators, if let's say you are still struggling with the breath, even though you've meditated for some time, that means you lack certain reflection. So every time you start meditating on the breath, it's like you are a beginner. You're struggling all over again. You know, you are kind of like reinventing the wheel. Right? You're repeating the process of struggling all over again like a beginner. There's no safe point or safe loading point for you to like start off from the middle. So that's why the first to the 9th instruction might be a good kind of cheat code. If let's say you are already a seasoned meditator, so these kind of reflections may help one to reduce craving, and once the mind is quite settled, then you can start with the mindfulness of the in and out breathing, right? But the mindfulness of in and out breathing, if let's say you really start from the beginning, and the last few steps of the mindfulness of in and out breathing, then they talk about this passion, yeah, impermanence and cessation and stuff like that. So the mindfulness of in and out breathing is quite complete by itself, but in order to have a smooth start or a good jump start, the seasoned meditator can actually try out this number 1 to number 9. So these are supposedly effective steps to create this detachment. And if I believe, based on what I recall from the previous video or the previous lesson, we talked about some of the dangers if you overdo it. If a person do not have sort of right view, they do not think of impermanence, and they straight away think of the unattractiveness of the body, they might develop clinging to aversion, clinging to unpleasant feelings, right? And we do not want that. So the first one is about setting the view right, having right view. And once you have that, then the rest of the reflection should be quite progressive and shouldn't lead you to any of the extremes. Okay, so we move on to the next slide. Okay, so we talk about this, reflect on impermanence on the 5 aggregates, form, feeling, perception, fabrications, and consciousness. We have to observe how they arise and pass away, or keep reflecting how they arise and pass away. So that is the first step. Next. And the next one is on not self. Yeah, non-self. So this one again, not meant to be the first question, not meant to be the first reflection. We start off with impermanence. So for reflection of non-self, requires some deduction, some conclusion before you can arrive to this concept of not self. Yeah, so once a person does enough reflection of impermanence, it should naturally kind of incline towards the feeling of non-self. I won't say conceptualizing of non-self. It's more like feel. When a person's ego is reduced, then that's the natural kind of not self, right? It's not about just theorizing and intellectualizing not self. A lot of people can intellectualize a lot of very deep stuff or profound stuff. I'll talk about emptiness even, and that may not lead to detachment. A person may still cling onto a lot of things, and they just love this kind of like to intellectualize, yeah? So that is the issue nowadays. Okay, next. So we touched on this on the previous lesson, so that's all the parts of the body. So in our routine, we don't actually do all the parts of the body because not everybody have seen all the parts of their own body before, right? So we talk about the joke, we have not like seen our brain before. And there's a viral meme I came across. It's about this atheist professor in a science lecture, atheist professor giving a lecture to his students. So he's saying, in science, whatever you can measure, whatever is observable, then that's real. Whatever you cannot observe, whatever you cannot measure, then it's not real. So he made a remark that, okay, God is not real. Yeah, and one of the students, which is probably quite religious, then he sort of raised his hand and asked his question. If that's the case, Professor, have you seen your own brain before? And then the professor is like, no, he has not seen his brain before. Then does that mean your brain is not real? Right, so that's the joke. But anyway, in our routine, we just do the external parts of the body, like our hairs of the head, hairs of the body, our nails, teeth, and skin. Things that we kind of see like every day, and we are sort of attached. Things like inside the body, we don't really get to see too much. So it's sometimes a bit even hard to imagine. Or some people may not have come across internal parts of the body, all the different parts of the organs. So it's a bit hard to like visualize them. So in this practice, it's more of visualization practice. It's not like observing, like seeing for yourself. But of course, there's another meditation called the contemplation of the, we call it stages of decomposition, bodily decomposition. So that requires like staring at a corpse. But in Singapore, we may not have that kind of facilities unless you're in that profession. If not, you can just briefly look at this slide, basically naming all the parts of the body. So in the ancient days, they don't have things like DNA and cells. So nowadays, the science is a bit more advanced. So if you want to talk about cells or DNA, sometimes it's a bit of imagination also. You need to recall how the cells look like from your TV program. Not many people have access to microscopes. Okay, then we move on to the next slide. Okay, so similar to the previous one, in our reflections, we talk about birth, aging, sickness, and death. Right, so this part is on the sickness. So reflection on sickness can lead to detachment. So the Buddha actually gave another teaching on the 5 contemplations. 5 contemplations, and the Buddha mentioned regardless whether you are a monk, a nun, a layman, or a laywoman, if you contemplate these 5 reflections, a person can actually reach enlightenment with these 5 reflections. So what are the 5 reflections? The first one is the contemplation of aging. Second one is sickness. Third one, death. Fourth one is this, I think it's karma, yeah? And the 5th one I forgotten. So total there are 5. Aging, sickness, death, karma, there's one more. So total there are 5 reflections. So if you pick any one of them and you kind of reflect them over and over again, it will create this dispassion. And the thing is, like this kind of reflection, especially got to do with the body, if a person does not have right view, it is easy to go to the extremes. So like the parts of the body, we talked about this 𝐷𝐵 Sutta before. If a person is too engrossed and attached to aversion, they may lead to this depression or even suicide. That even happened to the Buddha's disciples, and they go and take their own life. So we try not to overdo it. So that's why we mentioned in our meditation we have loving kindness first. Then once the mind is quite calm, at the right state of mind, then it's easier to reflect on impermanence. If you straight away start off with all these disease and death and impermanence, sometimes the mind cannot take it. The mind cannot take it, cannot accept. Yeah, then the mind have lots of resistance or shock or emotional kind of unrest. So it's good to calm down the mind, have some samatha first. We have a bit of loving kindness, and when the mind is more ready, then it's easier to do this kind of reflections. Okay, so down here it's like a mini encyclopedia of all the diseases. I don't want to read them. You can just take a quick look. The body has many pains and talk about all kinds of diseases. So if you really want to know all kinds of diseases, you can just flip through the medical encyclopedia. Okay, so this is called perception of drawbacks to the body. Okay, next. So that might be very useful also for a sick person. Like for this Girimānanda, he's very sick, very ill, so that kind of helps. So if a person thinks of these illness and drawback, like any kind of meditation, they can go to the extremes, either to greed or hatred. Greed means you're still attached to the body. Aversion would be you hate the body so much. So that won't lead to abandoning of this craving. So now we're going to talk about abandonment. And so I just read this out. And what is the perception of abandoning? There is the case where a monk doesn't acquiesce to an arising thought of sensuality. Acquiesce means to follow, to give in. He abandons it, destroys it, dispels it, and wipes it out of existence. Okay, so what does this first statement mean? Acquiesce to a reason thought of sensuality. So this one is in, especially for meditators or meditation, or even when you're not meditating, if let's say we have a certain stray thought, we can be daydreaming, we can be fantasizing, we can be worrying of anything. So that thought is a kind of like a drama show in the mind. So acquiesce means we get sucked into the story. We give in, we just follow the thought. We follow, we become part of the drama. So this is the issue. So this is part of the, we call being dragged around by the stream of craving. The stream of craving will, the currents will kind of pull us to the direction to suffering, away from release. Right? So how to not acquiesce to this sensuality? So I've always been repeating in our routine, always have right thought, right effort. Keep repeating the reflection like a mantra. So we always deliberately label, either we have loving kindness, wish that sense contact well and happy, or we can think of impermanence. So this is our two-step kind of method. So there must be a deliberate or intentional kind of labeling. We call it right thought. And there's no such thing called no thought. Because once you do not have thought, basically the mind will get dragged away. So you give in to these thoughts of sensuality. Okay, so he abandons, destroys, dispels, wipes it out of existence. So it's easy to say, but the steps is lots of effort required. He doesn't acquiesce to an arisen thought of ill will. Yeah, so ill will is aversion, thoughts of sensuality is craving, greed. He abandons it, destroys it, dispels it, and wipes it out of existence. Yeah, he doesn't acquiesce to an arisen thought of harmfulness. Yeah, so these are the three definitions of right thought in the, we call it Satipatthana Sutta. And the Buddha kind of defined what is right thought in the Noble Eightfold Path. So right thought is defined as thoughts of non-greed, non-ill will, and non-harmfulness. So these are the definition of right thought. So thoughts of he doesn't acquiesce to an arisen thought of harmfulness. He abandons it, destroys it, dispels it, and wipes it out of existence. He doesn't acquiesce to any arisen evil, unskillful qualities. Now he abandons them, destroys them, dispels, and wipes it out of existence. Yeah, so basically, if you do not let unskillful thoughts, unskillful qualities arise, this is called right effort. And if you destroy them, destroy these unskillful qualities, it is also part of right effort. So right effort has four kinds, four things. First is 2 for unskillful thoughts, 2 for skillful qualities. So for unskillful qualities, if they are present, you should overcome them or destroy them, dispel them, wipe them out of existence. So that is the first kind of right effort. And the second kind of right effort is if the unskillful qualities do not arise, and then you do not let it arise. That is the second right effort. The third right effort would be if you do not have skillful qualities, then you should create them, generate them. And if you already have skillful qualities, then you should maintain and perfect them. So these are the 4 right efforts, right? So basically, this entire paragraph talks about right thought and right effort. Yeah, right thought and right effort. So when we talk about loving kindness, it's about not acquiescing to ill will. Yeah, we learn how to overcome ill will. So that's also part of right thought and right effort. And when we want to overcome this sensuality, then we think of impermanence. And we think of impermanence, how to not cling. Yeah. So when we talk about thoughts of non-harmfulness, then we have compassion. Thoughts of compassion, part of the Brahma Viharas, 4 sublime states. All right. So this is the kind of the model we are following at the moment. That's the 5th paragraph here. Okay, next. Okay, and what is the perception of this passion? There is a case where a monk, having gone to a wilderness, to a shade of a tree, or to an empty building, reflect thus: this is peace, this is exquisite, the pacification of all fabrications, the relinquishing of all acquisitions, the ending of craving, dispassion, unbinding, and this is called the perception of this passion. Right? So basically they are encouraging us to find our own solitude, our own quiet space. Yeah, so it can be like an empty building even, it doesn't have to be a forest. So if you can go to a forest, you can go forest. If you can't, then you find a quiet empty room and you find your peace. Yeah. So that is the 6th perception. And the next one. And what is the perception of cessation? Right? So the same thing, if you go to a quiet place, then you read the statement again: this is peace, this is exquisite, the pacification of all fabrications, the relinquishing of all acquisitions, the ending of craving, cessation, unbinding. This is called the perception of cessation. Okay, so this one can only be done if a person truly reflect on impermanence and reduce craving. Yeah? So when the craving is reduced, then one may experience this cessation. Right? So you cannot force yourself and just tell your mind, I want cessation, cessation. It won't happen. Huh? So only if a person goes through the proper steps, have all the causes and the conditions, then this will be the result, cessation. So this is like the last few steps of even the Anapanasati on the breath meditation after reflection on impermanence. Okay, next. Okay, then this one is this taste, perception of this taste of every world. There is the case where a monk, abandoning any attachments, clingings, fixations of awareness, biases, or obsessions with regard to any world, refrains from them and does not get involved. This is called the perception of distaste for every world. Alright, so this one is talking about very subtle worlds. It's not about, not necessarily talking about the physical world, the animal world or the ghosts or the heavenly world, that kind of stuff. Right? So they talk about in the middle statement, clinging, fixations of awareness. Yeah, so if you pay attention to anything, the mind will actually drift to a certain topic, to a certain kind of drama, a certain kind of story. And that story is a world by itself. Yeah, so you can imagine you are, I don't know, in the, if let's say you watch a movie, then you are in that world. You are inside the story, in the drama. If you look at the news, then let's say some natural disaster somewhere, then you are in that world. Right? So the mind is very like jumpy, very fickle. So the mind can form many worlds. So the mind is always clinging and attached to these formations and these five aggregates, all these fabrications. So the idea is, if a person has experienced this peace of abandonment and cessation, then that will be the pull factor for the mind to want to enjoy this peace and not want to cling on sensual desire, which is our, we call this stray thoughts. When we fix our awareness to any kind of sensuality, then the mind will, an untrained mind will drift to this sensuality, thoughts of these dramas. Whereas if a person has sort of experience or kind of familiarity with cessation and dispassion or abandonment, then they kind of have a bit of reluctance to cling on to sensual or sensuality, thoughts of sensuality. Alright, so I kind of end my talk here. Okay, we go one more slide. Next slide, 9. Yeah, and what is the perception of undesirability of all fabrications? And there is the case where a monk feels horrified, humiliated, disgusted with all fabrications. This is called the perception of undesirability of all fabrication. So you can see this goes in a sequential order. So it's a natural progression of our spiritual development. So if a person already experienced detachment and this cessation and abandonment of craving, then naturally they will not want, or they would not like to cling on to sensual fabrications. So that is the 9th perception. And the 10th perception is, we'll talk it in the next lesson, and that will be the entire, I think, the 16 steps of the breath meditation. So that will be like another lesson by itself. So I shall end the short presentation today and open the ground for discussion. Anyone has any questions or anything you want to clarify? All okay, all clear. Because this one is either you have it or you don't have it. Okay, how about Terence, the Facebook comments? Are there any questions?
Yeah, I think in the chat got one.
Yeah, so for this Zoom chat, okay, there's a question. May I know how to evoke compassion? Yeah, so we do this in our routine. There is the mundane way, we call it empathy or sympathy or pity, P-I-T-Y, it is pity, not the Pali P-I-T-I. So the conventional way is to, when a person see someone else suffering, then they will feel like, don't feel so nice, and then the mind don't feel like want to help, you feel sorry or sad also together with the other person. So that is the mundane kind of compassion. So if we dwell on it too long, it may lead to burnout or depression. Yeah, so in our routine, we kind of not go into that track of worrying or how to plan to help those people. So we kind of we call this process a very draining process. And when you sort of kind of think of how to help the other person, so that is very draining. So in the meditation phase, we learn how to recharge the mind. So the samatha phase, learn how to sort of withdraw from the senses. So we try not to get into the dramas of planning and worrying. So we kind of use the foundation of the four elements. Yeah, foundation of the four elements, and we keep coming back to that. We have a concept that clinging on to all these aggregates will lead to suffering. So we kind of open up to all beings. All beings are subject to clinging and suffering. So every moment when we detect any of the elements, any of the sensations, we mentally keep repeating intentional labeling, wish all beings free from suffering. So in this recharging process, we do not go into the dramas, but we come back inside. Come back to being mindful of the elements and the five aggregates. All right, so hopefully I answered the questions. Okay, anyone else? Okay, if not, we go for a 5-minute break so you can have a do your stretching or even think of questions, and we can come back in 5 minutes time for the guided session. All right, see you all later. Okay, so let's see who is back. So actually, Susan already suggested 2 topics in queue after this topic, after this Girimānanda Sutta. So earlier on, I think one of the previous sessions, she mentioned about this 10 perfections. Because Karina mentioned 10 perceptions, then she misheard and she thought about 10 perfections. And she wanted me to cover on 10 perfections. And the other one is on the Four Noble Truths.
Bhante, I have a question, Bhante.
Yeah.
Sometimes when meditating, right, I mean, I'll be subconsciously, I would just think about work. Then when I realize it, okay, I'll come back to the present moment, but eventually it goes back again. How can I avoid this? And is this kind of a form of attachment as well?
Yeah, okay, so this is a very good question, because nowadays there's a lot of misunderstanding that being mindful means you must come back to the present moment, which is not necessarily true. So if we reference with the discourse on non-self, this Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, the Buddha mentioned that a person can have many kind of cognitive processes in their mind. They can be thinking of the past, present, or future. They can also think of this impermanence and non-self. Yeah, so regardless of scenario, as the main thing is to be mindful of impermanence. The mind cannot always be at the present moment. In fact, it is necessary to think of the past. Like for example, if we fill up a survey form or an application form or any kind of form, sometimes they ask, when is your birthday? And you cannot put present moment. If you put present moment, you get into trouble. So you need to think of the past. And some of the reflections we have, thinking of the qualities of the Buddha, there's also thinking of the past. Not thinking of this aging, sickness, death, thinking of the future. Right? So there is a thinking of past, present, and future, but we need to do it in a way that creates detachment. Either you reflect correctly or reflect wrongly. So even thinking of the present can be a wrong reflection. A person can be at the present but still have attachment and suffering. Yeah, let's, for example, let's say people who are very vain and attached to the body, they like to take photos of themselves a lot, always at the present, always look at the mirror, very present, but lots of attachment.
Okay.
So basically the emphasis is on reflection on impermanence. So whatever the mind, however the mind moves or however it places its attention, as long as you are mindful of impermanence, then that's okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, no problem.
So, Bhante, do you mean to say that, okay, at the point of time when we are meditating, then suddenly our mind drift off? So in order to pull back our mind, we reflect on the impermanence straight away.
Yeah,
But-
that's why the intentional labeling will create this wakefulness.
But sometimes it's quite difficult because you are being dragged away. Then you want to come back to the present.
Yeah, this is an indicator of how attached to sensuality versus how contented are you with the peace of mind. So it's a good indicator. Yeah.
Thank you,
So you
Bhante.
want to know how much you improve in your practice, then you observe last year how many times you drift off.
No, Bhante, not you never practice.
Hmm.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Okay, no problem. Okay, anyone else? Okay, if not, then we can proceed on with the guided kind of meditation. So we mute ourselves, find a comfortable sitting position, make sure the back is upright and the rest of the body relaxed. Yeah, so I recalled the 5 contemplations. So the other one that I missed out is separation from all that is dear and appealing to oneself. Yeah. So these are the 5 contemplations. Okay, so we start off with these impurities of the body meditation. And we're going to start with visualizing all the hairs of the head, hairs of the body. So by thinking of the body parts itself, there's no Dhamma value. So a person can still incline to greed and hatred. So greed would be like, oh, my hair is so nice, so beautiful, I like my hair. So that's greed. Or hatred, oh, my hair is so messy today, I don't like this fashion. Right, then you have aversion, greed and hatred. So what we're doing is we add this right contemplation, the right thought. Yeah, so we're going to first wish all the hairs well and happy. Whenever you think of a patch of hair, then you wish it well and happy. New patch of hair arise, wish it well and happy. New image arise, wish it well and happy. So the phrasing is to wish the hairs, not wish my hair. You try not to bring in the ego or increase the ego and the self-cherishing kind of thoughts. And we need to keep repeating. Because once we stop repeating this wish, then we will acquiesce to the stray thoughts. Either you have skillful thoughts or unskillful thoughts. Only these 2 options. A new patch of hair of the head, new patch of hair of the body, wish it well and happy. Okay, if you find your mind relatively calm, then that would be the right opportunity to think of impermanence, reflect on impermanence. So all these hairs are subject to birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. So you think of the hairs growing and falling, many cycles. So this is part of the reflection on disease and decay. Hairs growing and falling. Don't have to over imagine. The whole idea is to think of impermanence fast. Once you stuck on a scene for too long, Like maybe if a person think of dandruff or think of lice, hate lice, and the mind will start to suffer, start to worry. Oh no, what kind of product should I buy to overcome this problem? So that is suffering already. So we try to practice detachment, fast forward the process. Think of hairs growing and falling. And as we keep looping this process, we can observe the arising and passing of the 5 aggregates. So that is the first perception. So the image of the hairs, that's the first aggregate. And together there's also, first aggregate is form. Form is made of the 4 elements, earth, fire, wind, water elements. Anything hard, anything tangible. These are the 4 elements. And the second aggregate would be the feelings. So together in that image there will be feelings, whether you find you like the hair, you don't like the hair. There's pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feelings. And the third aggregate will be perception. All the labels and terms you've learned before, and you give a name to that object. So that is perception. You try to cognize and you give a name, you call it old hair, a young hair, black hair, white hair. All these are perceptions. And you have this thing called mental formation, the 4th aggregate. Every time you generate a new image, that is part of mental formation. And the last aggregate would be this consciousness. Consciousness is your awareness. So you have eye consciousness, ear, nose, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Different senses, different awareness, different consciousness. So like when we are visualizing the hairs, we are using the mind door consciousness. And if you're hearing my voice, you're using the ear consciousness. So in between 2 images, like the hair is growing and hair is falling, what happens to that consciousness? Does it stay there always, or does it move around? Does it disappear? Does it? No, what happened? So we need to observe how these 5 aggregates, how they arise and pass away. So you can choose to think of one aggregate at a time, or observe one at a time. All 5 will be there actually. Okay, so we are thinking of the impermanence of all the 5 aggregates of the hairs. The more we think of impermanence, the more the mind should be able to detach. And we can observe whether the mind getting more peaceful or more agitated. And we can ask ourselves, are these hairs truly self? So this is the second reflection on non-self. Can you tell your hairs not to go through this birth and death? Okay, and the next part of the body, we can think of the nails, fingernails and toenails, and we wish them well and happy. And all these nails are subject to birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. So we think of them growing and falling, many cycles. So that's the reflection on drawbacks and this disease. We do it in a fast-forward manner, and while we keep looping these images, we can observe the arising and passing of the 5 aggregates. Form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. Every time we generate an image, there's 5 aggregates there. So we observe how they arise and pass away. Okay, then we can ask ourselves, are these nails truly self? Or are these 5 aggregates perceiving the nails, are they truly self? Can you tell this mind or mind matter not to go through this birth and death? Okay, then the next part of the body, we're going to think of the teeth, all the teeth inside the mouth, may they be well and happy, all the upper rows of teeth and lower rows of teeth, may they be well and happy. Okay, and all these teeth are subject to birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. So we think of the teeth growing and falling, many cycles. Even though the teeth fall off the most twice, we can just keep repeating. And this is just a mental detachment exercise. And while we keep looping this image, we can also observe the arising and passing of the 5 aggregates. Okay, then we can ask ourselves, are these teeth truly self? Can we tell the teeth not to go through birth and death? And next we can think of the skin surrounding the entire body, and we wish them well and happy. Every time you think of a new patch of skin, wish them well and happy, new patch of skin, well and happy. Okay, and now we can think of the impermanence of all the skin. All the skin go through birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. So we think of the skin growing and falling, many cycles. And as we keep looping this process, we can also observe the arising and passing of the 5 aggregates. And then we can ask ourselves, is skin truly self? Can we tell the skin not to go through birth and death? Okay, and now we move on to the second phase of meditation, which is the four sublime states. And for this routine onwards, there's no need to visualize. So now we are using the feeling of sensations. So we have some familiarizing and grounding with the four elements, mindfulness of the body. So now we're going to detect all the sensations appearing in the body, whatever sensation appear or whatever is obvious, then just wish them well and happy. So the four elements are the earth, fire, wind, and water elements. So the earth element represents any hard or soft sensations. Fire is hot and cold. Wind element is fast and slow movements. And water element is moist or dry sensations. So basically these are just general kind of classifications. If whatever sensation appears, you have no idea which category, doesn't matter. Don't have to crack your brain, just wish them well and happy. So the whole idea is to make peace with the sensations. Don't purposely create or generate those sensations out. Let them appear naturally by themselves. So that's part of mindfulness of the body, and we also have mindfulness of feelings. Sometimes there's also painful feelings. Sometimes they're nice, pleasant feelings. Sometimes they're neutral. So whatever feeling that comes, we also make peace with them, wish them well and happy. So always intentional labeling. We call it skillful thinking, skillful qualities. Keep generating the skillful qualities, wish them well and happy. So even though we're using a different meditation object from before, and the process is very similar because we're using the samatha phase, which is the calming phase, using the loving kindness. The mind should calm down more or less the same way. So if the mind is relatively calm, then you can take note of this emotion, this state of mind, and we take note this as the baseline emotion. This is a restricted form of loving kindness. And now we are going to cultivate this boundless loving kindness, and we are going to wish all beings in all directions well and happy, above, below, and all across. So you just make a gentle wish, no need to push the mind. We let the mind extend naturally by itself, Doesn't matter how far it extends. We don't try to control. And we use the non-discriminative approach, and we use common denominator. All beings are made of these 4 elements or the 5 aggregates. So whenever we detect any sensation, we wish all beings well and happy. So no need to visualize. Or for this routine, try not to visualize. Because when we visualize a certain group of people, there will be certain kind of past emotional baggage or kind of perceptions. So we try to keep the mind boundless and try to keep this loving kindness a noble kind of concept. It's like wishing for world peace. So we try not to limit ourselves to thinking, oh, my close friends or relatives, wish them well. No, so we try not to restrict ourselves. So we open up, make it boundless, wish all beings well and happy. So new sensation appear, may all beings be well and happy. New sensation appear, may all beings be well and happy. Doesn't matter the sensations are inside the body or outside the body, near or far, just keep repeating this wish. So the detecting of these sensations are called mindfulness of the body, right mindfulness. And every time you label that sensation, we call it right thought. So keep on wishing all beings well and happy. Okay, so the more you keep generating this loving, boundless loving kindness, and the mind should activate all these noble eightfold path. And if you do it correctly, there should be an increment in this joy and happiness compared to the baseline emotion earlier, which is relatively bland. So if there is an increment of this joy and happiness, so that may be the first level of concentration. And regardless of what you experience, keep on wishing all beings well and happy. Treat everything else as distraction and byproduct. Emphasis is on the right thought, the right labeling. Keep on wishing all beings well and happy. Okay, and then we are going to add some insight, some wisdom, and we're going to reflect on how to cultivate a more unconditional kind of loving kindness, which is to use detachment with impermanence. So we're going to keep observing all these sensations, how they arise and pass away. And every time we observe this change, we need to label also, label whatever word or phrase that's associated with impermanence. You can use impermanence, anicca, rising, falling, change, whichever your favorite, and keep repeating. And if let's say that joy and happiness start to disappear, which is a very natural kind of progression, one may experience a kind of equanimity, and this neutral but refreshing kind of experience. And we are going to emphasize on impermanence, keep reflecting on impermanence. Everything else is just distraction and byproduct. Okay, so the reflection of loving kindness is to overcome anger, right? And the next sublime state we are going to move on to is compassion. So for compassion is to overcome cruelty, to wish all beings free from suffering. So that's thoughts of harmlessness. And the same thing, we are using the non-discriminative approach. So all beings, regardless of their health status, whether they are healthy or sick, or their wealth status, whether they are rich or poor, as long as they cling onto the five aggregates, they will have this suffering, mental distress, mental suffering. So that's the common denominator. So whenever we detect any sensation which is subject to clinging and suffering, then we wish all beings free from suffering. So new sensation appear, may all beings be free from suffering. New sensation appear, may all beings be free from suffering. So please don't visualize. Once you start to imagine a certain group of people or a scenario, then we ourselves will get cling on to the story, the five aggregates, and we, the mind, will suffer together. So we always come back to the anchor, to the sensations as the evidence, foundation of the body, four elements. So the conventional kind of compassion is to worry for the other party, which is very draining. So in this case, we are learning how to recharge the mind. So we try to withdraw from the thinking, from the senses of thinking, over dramatizing. And every time new sensation appear, wish all beings free from suffering. Okay, the mind, you keep repeating this wish, and one may experience this second level of concentration denoted by the emotion of joy and happiness. So if you find that your compassion got joy one, then that is the concentrative kind of compassion. The mundane kind of compassion is like very sorrowful, very sad. And regardless of what you experience, keep on wishing all beings free from suffering. Even concentrative states are also part of the five aggregates. Okay, then we're going to add some wisdom to the reflection. We're going to reflect how to overcome the suffering. And so the true compassion is actually to learn to not cling on these 5 aggregates. And we shake off this clinging with impermanence. So we're going to keep observing impermanence, keep reflecting on impermanence, and keep labeling impermanence with every observation. Okay, let's say the joy and happiness start to disappear again, then one may experience a kind of blankness or spaciousness. So the combination of this compassion and impermanence may lead one to this perception of space. And regardless of what you experience, keep on reflecting on impermanence, and do not get lost in the space. Okay, before we conclude this session, same gentle reminder from the Girimānanda Sutta. As long as one maintains these boundless sublime states in all activities, standing, sitting, walking, or lying down, then this is the noblest living. And with that in mind, we can gently open our eyes, formally end the session, and informally still can generate right thought. Okay, anyone has any problems or questions? Okay, no issues, huh? So Linda, you just came in?
Yeah, good evening, Bhante. Yeah, I'm late. Yeah.
Did you attend the video sessions earlier?
No, I tried to log into Facebook, yeah, but I think cannot make it. Then I don't know whether
okay.
his session is still on or no. That's why I just try to join.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Can.
Ah.
All right. Okay, if no issues, then we are going to do the dedication chant. Okay, so we need, dedicating merits. Akasata ca Bhumata Deva Naga Mahidika Punyang Tang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Loka Sasanang Etavata ca Amhehi Sampadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Deva Sabbe Bhuta Sabbe Sata Anumodantu Sabba Sabbati Siddhya. And dedication of merits to departed. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. And aspiration, imina punya kamena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavani bana patiya sadhu sadhu sadhu. And we end off with giving 3 respects by bowing 3 times to the Buddha. First bow, second bow, third bow. Okay, so that's the end. Any announcements from Terence?
No, Bhante.
Okay, all right. So if not, then good night, everyone. See you all next week.